Hi, my name is Jorge Jordan. I will be presenting on the domestication of the chicken. Modern domestic chickens descend from one of the four known species of junglefowl habitating areas of Southeast Asia around 50 million years ago. Fossils of the junglefowl ancestor indicate they sought and dispersed into warmer climates during periods of glaciation, allowing for the evolution of various species. There are four known species of junglefowl: the red junglefowl, Gallus gallus, from southern China; the Sri Lankan junglefowl, Gallus lafayette, from Sri Lanka; the grey junglefowl, Gallus sonerati, from the Indian peninsula; and the green junglefowl, Gallus varius, from Indonesia. Darwin was the first to suggest the red junglefowl, Gallus gallus, was the most probable bird to have become the domesticated chicken. But it was discovered that the yellow skin and yellow legs of some domesticated chickens might have been inherited by the grey junglefowl, the Gallus sonerati, found today in India. The yellow skin of many chickens support the theory of multiple progenitors, which is the foundation for the hypothesis of several domestications occurring independently across Southeast Asia. Any theory or hypothesis was proved wrong when in 1996 it was reported that the red junglefowl was the primary and sole ancestor of the domestic fowl, also known as Gallus gallus domesticus. The use of molecular genetics provided evidence that the origin of the domestic fowl was monophyletic. Domestication is a process where a wild organism is accustomed to survive in the company of human beings. Adaptation of the animal to new environment conditions may produce changes in behavior and physiology. These changes associated with domestication are a must, though they vary according to the type of domestication. It could be for fighting, or meat and egg production. Junglefowl remains were first found in China 10,000 years ago, in the Yellow River area of northern China. The DNA from 10,000-year-old fossil bones confirmed they belong to the same lineage as modern domestic chickens. Whether it was domesticated or not, it's hard to say. There is not enough evidence. Archaeological findings in southern China indicate that the chicken had been domesticated by 5400 BC, but the main source of the domestic chicken's diffusion throughout the world is said to come from the Harappan culture of the Indus Valley in between 2500 and 2100 BC. It is thought the relationship between humans and chickens was rather casual. The shift from wild to domestic chicken probably did not require much effort compared to larger animal domestication. It was definitely not as dangerous. Researchers have not been able to pinpoint a particular area, people or culture where domestication began. Rather, the wild fowl might have naturally fit into human civilization, eventually becoming domesticated and serving various purposes. There are four stages that have been identified in the taming of the chicken. Domestication took place for human interest of religion and culture as they became a focus of folklore, mythology, and religious symbolism. Cockfighting was also one of their first interests. The second stage is coordinated with their geographical dispersal, resulting in regional breeds. Number 3 is characterized with the increase of industry and agriculture in Europe and North America. This created selective mating of certain breeds. The fourth stage is associated by industrialized farming and poultry capitalism of the 20th century. We can find examples of religion and culture In the Encyclopedia of Diderot d'Alembert Collaborative Translation Project, they say the Romans took chickens to military outposts where they thought to have the ability to tell the future. In fact, nothing significant was undertaken in the Senate or in the armies without an omen being drawn from the sacred chickens. These omens consisted on how the bird ate the grain it was given. If they ate avidly, the augur was favorably, and if they refused to eat or drink, the omen was bad, and they abandoned any idea or battle they had planned. Cockfighting was practiced everywhere chickens were farmed. Many chicken breeds owe different physical traits, such as long necks, small wings, and short muzzles, to their domestication for fighting. Egyptians used chickens for cockfighting rather than food or religious means, and would later develop incubation techniques that involved burning camel feces and straw to warm and incubate the fertilized eggs. As for geographical dispersal, chickens spread around the globe over thousands of years via trade, migration, and territorial conquest. Chickens chart not just our desires, but also our paths. They can probably tell us a thing or two about our own history. From southern China, the chicken left its natural range behind and embarked on the Grand Tour. First, they reached West Asia and the Near East. Then, they were introduced to Europe by the Phoenicians. Up until then, chickens had mostly a ceremonial or symbolic role. In the Americas' particular case, the Polynesian brought chickens to the Pacific coast of South America around 1200 AD. In an archaeological site near Santiago de Chile, chicken bones were discovered that yielded radiocarbon that dates between 1300 and 1400, long before European arrival. Inhabitants of the New World became well versed in chicken breeding, mostly to the popularity of cockfighting. Spanish explorers brought chickens to North America, and chickens soon became widely dispersed across the continent. Industry and agriculture was the beginning of modern domestication. Let's fast forward in between the 1900s and the 1920s. Chickens were being raised in family farms. A flock would have 400 birds, which was considered large. Chicken meat was a delicacy being served in holidays only. Eggs were the family's primary income source. The average chicken would lay in between 80 and 150 eggs per year. The chicken diet was basically whatever they got: handouts of grain, scraps, and waste from kitchens. The ones destined for poultry were fed buttermilk and extra grain. During winters, chickens did not do well. They did not have built coops like we see today, which led to a high mortality rate of around 40%. Lack of vitamin D was discovered in the early 20s and led to a small revolution in poultry keeping. It was supplemented in food, which helped chickens survive throughout the winter and produce healthier chicks. In between 1920 and 1930, industrialized farming started, giving birth to the age of the broiler industry. In 1923, Miss Wilmer Steele of Delaware became the pioneer of the commercial broiler industry. She was the first person to have a house with a 10,000 bird capacity. This was the beginning of confined housing for birds and industrial status for broilers. Cage systems were introduced in California. Mortality dropped to 5%, and egg production rose to 250 plus eggs per year per chicken. Before 1940, in 1939, World War II broke out. By 1941, the US had joined the Allied forces. In 1942, the online eviscerator was invented. It was a device used to gut the chicken leaving it ready to cook. Prior to this, eviscerating was considered a kitchen skill. For the following years, chicken slowly began to be raised intensively. In between the 1950s and the 1960s, chicken stopped being a luxury food. Large industrial operations lowered the price of the egg. Now most families could afford chickens. Refrigeration was invented, allowing produce to be stored at home for much longer. Companies bought the feed mills, hatcheries in order to control production, which also made everything cheaper. Flock sizes started increasing massively. However, with this came issues of disease control and prevention, medicine, and vaccination. From 1970 till 1990, there were great advancements in nutrition, great advancements in genetic improvement of fowl. There was increased mechanization, and the beginning of eradication programs started. By that time, the first antibiotic-free birds were sold. Trends toward eating local chicken started. Throughout the 1980s, animal activists rose to campaign for animal rights, a practice that is still enforced today. In 1990, a movement towards natural and organic birds started. By 1992, chicken was the top-selling meat, surpassing pork and beef. About chicken today. In the beginning of the 20th century, chickens were raised by families in their backyards or small farms. Then they became massively industrialized, and today chickens are slowly but surely going back to backyards. Also today, we find the free range movement. It has become extremely popular, and it has made a lot of people look to buy eggs and meat from birds that are treated ethically in their farms. Though it's very important that it's understood the free range only means cage free. So there's industry that sells eggs that are free range. That just means that their chickens are not in cages, but they're still stuck in the warehouses. Good thing is that there's a small part of the industry that is changing by letting them roam free on real fields and actual pastures, hunting and pecking for extra food along the way. Some domestic chickens today are probably and most likely behaving as they did in the beginning of domestication of the 20th century. Though many movements have started for the chicken to be treated in a more humane manner, there are still industrial animal factories where hens live in arguably the worst conditions of any tamed animal, living in extreme confinements, unable to perform any of their natural forms of behavior. The industry's business model is based on high volume production with a relentless motive to minimize expenses and maximize profits. It works so that everything is fully automatic, and the most time-consuming part of the process is removing a small percentage of hen who die along the way. Also, domestic chicken variations are disappearing. In the search for the perfect egg and poultry producing bird, the considered weaker links have started to disappear. Like all other industrially farmed animals, hens are not protected by the Animal Welfare Act or the Federal Humane Slaughter Act. After that super mega bummer of a last slide, I would like to leave you with some awesome chicken facts. Paleontologist Jack Horner discovered a 68 million-year-old T-Rex fossil in Montana. Inside his thigh bone, they found a blood vessel. Once that blood vessel was analyzed, it revealed that genetically speaking, the domestic chicken is the closest relative to the Tyrannosaurus rex, which is pretty cool. Also, I'm leaving this link to a video that confirms what came first, the chicken or the egg. It's quite entertaining and it actually, makes everything make sense regarding that subject. These are my references. Um, I hope the presentation made any sense. I hope you learned. I hope you understood me. I hope my English was not that bad. And thank you very much.